You're listening to a nerdy production. Warning, this is a nerdy production. Welcome to the GM Workshop. We want to dive into insight and tricks from game masters and game designers all over the world and digging up that tacit knowledge so we all can be better game masters and evolve the hobby we love so much. Reach out to us on the GM Workshop at Facebook, Twitter, and Discord, and subscribe to the podcast in any podcast app you are using. And now, on to today's episode. Welcome to the GM Workshop. This is a short intro for the podcast. Niels and I, Jacob, want to set up some expectation for the podcast. This is a relaunch of the podcast, and we want to change up the language from primarily Danish to English to get a better outreach. But Niels, what are your insight on this change?
So far we've been approaching local GMs in the Danish community and some international ones, but most of the podcast so far has been in Danish. And speaking with them about the tacit knowledge that they've built up over their years of GMing. The idea is that we had a lot of conversations around our own gaming tables and figured that expanding that conversation to invite more people in and ask what they're doing was a way to share experience and help us all improve. So that's what we have been doing. We've been talking about different genres, different formats of roleplay. We've been talking about safety on and off, but there's also a dedicated chapter or a dedicated episode for it. And we've sort of gotten to the point where we've gotten, as far as I'm concerned, an amazing amount of support in the Danish community. But there aren't that many Danish GMs, and we're also getting interest from the English-speaking communities. Now we're trying to expand and do essentially the same thing, but in a language where more people, hopefully, can participate and enjoy us being very nerdy on a microphone.
Yeah, one of the issues was that game designers are mostly from English-speaking countries. We have some Danish game designers, Black Void and Hildeliv and Lev we have talked to, but if we want to explore more game design, we have to reach out for the English audience for sure. And as you said, the tacit knowledge is so important to get into the light and see how we can use it to be better at this hobby for sure.
There's also, we've also just been speaking with people who've been GMing for like 10, 20, 30 years and thought they had something worthwhile to share.
Yeah.
And we've done that with several Danish GMs, and it's been great. But to a lot of people, just showing up on a podcast and say, hey, I have something worthwhile to say, ends up being a daunting task. So usually the people who work with roleplay from a design perspective have a more sort of structured overview of what they want to share. And we're sort of running out of those, although we have had the pleasure of having some of them in several times to help us out.
Yeah, we are running out of game masters and game designers, of course, in Danish, so we have to reach out to an English audience, and the hopes are we get more cool talks with cool game masters and game designers.
Yeah. I think when it really started to dawn on me that it was a little bit ironic that we were doing it this way was when we started interviewing people who were building D&D modules. I was like, hold on, what's the Danish versus the international market on this? So yeah, it'll be fun to try and get it out to more people where it applies. Yeah.
Yeah, we also have topics about safety and the difference between US-based and European role-playing. We have topics on appropriation, and we have topics surrounding how the community are evolved. So that's going to be cool to have an insight on these perspectives for sure. So what are your thoughts about this, Niels?
Oh, the thing is, roleplay has become sort of an international hobby. I think we're in touch with a guy from New Zealand. That's geographically about as far away as it gets. It's become a global hobby, but the thing is, a lot of the habits we develop in our local communities. So I've learned to roleplay in a local community where I think the GMs live within 30 kilometers of each other, and you develop these habits, and sometimes they're not conductive to what you actually want to do. So drawing inspiration from other places can yield some really good results. Also in the last 25 years now that I think of it, but for the last very long time, we've been defining roleplay styles in various geographical areas. I think the one that I've run my face most violently into is the concept of Nordic Larping, because I was gone from the LARP community for a decade, came back, and all of a sudden there was this giant in the room, and I was like, oh my god, what's that? and being aware of what those things are and what opportunities they present will allow you to do more and do better as a, well, I mean, for Nordic Larp as a LARP organizer, but as somebody who organizes and participates in role playing in general.
But also the talk about appropriation is very vogue and very not in the role playing community as a whole, but it is, and we have to acknowledge that as a player and as a GM. We have the talk about race. We have talk about safety with Jacqueline, who's also created some of the scenarios for Cold Divinity Lost, and she has some brilliant insights on everything concerning safety and safety mechanisms. And it's so important for us, very old GM as I am and as you are, and we want to get updated so new players can get this safe room for players and the session zero and the safety mechanisms and the tools to see we have a hobby now that's more than just white guys in a basement.
Absolutely. And I think a lot of it is happening quietly. I mean, looking back at my old roleplay notes from the 90s, I'm about to start moving, so I've been going through old moving boxes. There's definitely a difference in how we approach roleplay, and I remember I have an old role-playing book wherein it says that women should play roles like princesses and priests and be protected by male warriors. It's from the 90s. It's terrible. And these things have been just slowly changing on their own.
For sure.
But becoming aware of them allows us to engage with that in a more interesting way. So yeah, these are important talks to have because they do shape what's going on around the table. And in particular, it might help you play with people you'd otherwise have weird conflicts with because you lack the vocabulary.
Yeah, it's a great point, Nils. And on the other side, we have some more easygoing topics, if you can say so. We have some Dungeons & Dragons. We have some episodes in the pipeline for you for Dark Sun and Ravenloft and how to create a tabletop game with minis and terrain and so on. So there is a lot of different stuff coming your way for sure. So subscribe to the podcast so you can get all the insights from these brilliant game designers and game masters for sure.
Yeah, I was about to say, you say that our favorite D&D setting is Dark Sun. I think I actually prefer Ravenloft, although it's a tight race.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's a tight race though, but
yeah, for me it's Dark Sun and Ravenloft is neck and neck, but Ravenloft has some issues with the horror part of the game which are not liable with Dungeons & Dragons, the hero's journey. That's for certain also the issue with Dark Sun, but that's another talk.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, Ravenloft is sort of great despite of the beginnings of Dungeons & Dragons, but once you get past that, it is pretty great.
First off, we have Andy Gasker, that's a game designer on Alien RPG. This talk will come right after this intro for the podcast. The Alien RPG is one of my favorite games. You are not so fond of it, but you can understand why it's working.
It's really great for what it wants to do.
Yeah.
It's just not the kind of roleplay I want to play.
It's hard-packed action, and Andrew Gaska have talked to me about why this game is working and why it's such a great game. And I was a bit fanboyish when I talked to him, and it was he's a great guy for sure.
What I think is really great about Andrew though is that he represents a place where he's coming from, where it's about trying to transform these franchises into role-playing worlds. And that's a really interesting perspective to have in mind, because I think we're going to see more of it. As role-playing grows, obviously you're going to want to import famous, in this case, movie franchises and turn them into role-playing systems. So
yeah, it's a great point, Nils, because big franchises as Aliens and like Conan and Star Trek and Star Wars, of course, has been in the role-playing hemisphere for so long time. But when we look at other franchises, maybe smaller franchises like Mass Effect or other games, especially computer games that are huge, Skyrim are coming at the Modifius IP now, and I think we have to see more of these, and Andrew has some great insights on this perspective, and I want to dive into his knowledge about franchises and how to build bridges to role-playing game. But I said, yeah, as a Mass Effect, Nils, Mass Effect. We need that.
It would be amazing if they ever made the role-playing system. I just really hope they include the original design notes for their what do they call the space elves?
Azaris.
They're called Asari, thank you. It was too far away there for a second. But I mean, the original design notes for those when the developers sat down and made the race was lesbian space elves. Please keep that design note in the role-playing document. It'll be funny. But yeah, no, I think we're going to see much more of that. Also because these IT giants or computer developer giants are increasingly leaning in on this metaverse thing where everything has to overlap with everything. So it sort of plays into that.
Sure.
That
but
narrative as well.
It's coming up, all of it, and I'm looking very much forward to jump into more English episodes for certain. It's so much fun to create these episodes of these talks. So reach out to us if you like this and you want to give your perspective, not only as a GM or a game designer, but also if you have some other insights on how we get better at this hobby. For sure, it's.
Just please don't hold back because you're not a super expert. We'll have a talk with you about what makes sense. And also be advised, we don't know that much about the international roleplay community. So if you're from Hungary and you ask me what dominates the Hungarian role-playing scene, I'll be like, so bear with us on that point. We're also learning here.
But yeah, reach out to us. It's could be cool to have us have a talk about some system that are not in our vicinity. This was our short intro for the conversion from Danish to English. Now to the talk with Andrew Gasker. I hope you enjoyed. Bye. Follow us on Facebook, GM Workshop, the podcast. If you want to interact with us and talk to us, give us a message. You're listening to a nerdy production. Warning, this is a nerdy production. Welcome to the GM Workshop. We want to dive into insight and tricks from game masters and game designers all over the world and digging up that tacit knowledge so we all can be better game masters and evolve the hobby we love so much. Reach out to us on the GM Workshop at Facebook, Twitter, and Discord, and subscribe to the podcast in any podcast app you are using. And now, on to today's episode. Roll for initiative. Welcome to the GM Workshop. Today I'm talking to Andrew Gasker. He is a lead designer on Alien RPG from Free Liga and have taken the time to talk to us on our podcast on Alien RPG and all the details and all the fun stuff in this setting and everything around the Alien franchise and so on. So Andrew, first of all, I want to introduce you. Can you talk to the listeners about who you are, like role-playing wise, and why you are landed in a cool professional nerd for so many in so many words? But can you try to elaborate on this?
Yeah, I've written a couple Planet of the Apes novels. I've written a couple of graphic novels for Choose Your Own Adventure. And I was the franchise consultant for Fox and now 20th Century Studios on Alien, Predator, and Planet of the Apes. So basically, what that means is I worked on the Bibles. I mean, in regards to Predator, I'm actually the one who did the whole Bible.
Nice.
But for Alien and Planet of the Apes, I worked on the Bibles. I helped to keep continuity. To get continuity established for expanded universe things, and this was I came on in 2015, late 2015. Yeah. So it was weird. It was kind of a weird period because it was that's when Disney was talking about buying them, and then there was a transition thing there. So, but yeah. So because of that experience. I was asked to write the history and setting for the Alien role-playing game, and that led to me writing a bunch of adventures for it as well.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm also working on the Terminator role-playing game for Nightfall Games.
Nice.
And
Okay. We can talk about that
a
later.
bunch of other things, most of which I can't talk about yet. But when you have me on next, I can mention them probably.
For sure. You are always welcome. When you are role-playing game and your sphere is like it's colliding a lot, are you role-playing yourself, or are GMing or anything in that regards?
I GM'd for 22 years,
That's
and then probably about 8 years ago or something like that, I stopped.
Yeah.
Because I was working in video games. I worked for Rockstar Games on games like Grand Theft Auto and Red Dead Revolver and things like that.
Yeah.
And because of that, there was no time, so I gave it up. And then when Free League had me writing the other stuff, for whatever reason, the writer that was supposed to write the first adventure, which wound up becoming Chariot of the Gods, they bowed out, or I don't know what happened, but they said, "Hey, do you want to take a stab at this?" And I was like, "Well, I've never done it professionally, but I have written novels and whatnot, and I did do this, personally for 22 years, so I gave it a shot, and luckily it seemed to have worked out." So
that's for sure.
I one of the things I try to make sure I have is, and I don't know if I'm jumping the gun by saying this, but players have a tendency, if you're supposed to go east, players always want to go west.
Yeah.
So I try to work the adventures so that there's ways to take care of anything that the players might do. And because of this, one of the things that I'm very happy that the response we seem to get from the players a lot is that from game masters is that they can run the same adventure with the same group 4 different times and nothing the same happens.
Oh.
So there's a lot of room in there, and I'm very happy about that.
Yeah, for sure. I like the modules. I'm normally not a GM using modules or adventures or scenarios or what do you call them when I'm GMing, but in Aliens I really want to try to find out what the Alien games are about, because I love the movies and I love the franchise and so on. But what do you want as a designer, game designer, and often the modules created or the scenarios or whatever the adventures as you call them are often great guidelines to what the game designer wants to do in the franchise and as a whole, for sure.
It's interesting because I actually shopped the idea around to several companies for 18 months of picking up the Alien role-playing game, because my position over dealing with Fox, they were like, "Hey, if you can find somebody who wants to do this, we could totally recommend you to write it." And everyone said, "Oh, it'll never sell. It's a one-note thing," So my immediate goal was to prove that wrong, to just show how many nuances there are in this universe, and how an adventure, players may know the Alien and think they know how this is going to go down, but it'll get off the rails real fast because
oh, yes.
you throw in the right type of surprises and nobody knows what to expect. So that's what it comes down to in the end, is meeting your players' expectations and then throwing those out the window and having them have to fend for themselves with no idea what's going on. That's what happens in the movies, so that's what should happen at your game table.
Yeah, for sure. Because I like the especially I'm running the Alien Colonial Marine campaign for some of my buddies in Copenhagen, and I love the concept that the story is for the players and not for the characters. It's like a meta story through the 7 scenarios, the 7 small adventures that confines the frontier war, and I love the way you have constructed the Alien RPG have constructed and Free League have constructed that characters are often very dead or dies often, but but no problem, I got this character for you. Read it. Let's go into the breach, dear friends, again, and so on. And I love that concept, because often players protect their characters a lot by you taking choices that are not very compatible with Alien RPG, because we have to, take the first movie. If they saw those weird eggs in the cave, they would just say, "Oh, whoop, no way, I'm leaving." We haven't get any movies from there, right? So it's very important to the players to understand this when we are playing Aliens. Use your character. Don't be afraid of losing it, and you'll always get another one. And in your death, and your epic death will be a part of the story, not only a stop and go situation for this, for sure.
One of my favorite things that I've seen is the players who do embrace that role. You know, they're like, especially with the cinematics, when we have the agendas for the characters, they'll take some people will take that agenda to the extreme, and do things that are, you know, they're clearly going to get them killed, but it totally fits the agenda for the character. So, you know, they're really playing it up and they're really getting into it, and I love seeing that. It's a level of creativity that you don't normally see in these things, because people are like, no, I'm protecting my character. It means this character is me. It's my life. No, we're talking about making a really cool horror story instead here. So.
Yeah, the link in the bleed in between characters are very obvious, and we want to play our characters and want to immerse into our characters, but we also disconnect from our characters very fast when the alien rip our head off and just get another character, right? And that's a great immersionary ability to in the game, for sure. If is that even a word? But in our it's not a word. Okay.
I also tell people, you know, Ripley only made it through 3 adventures before she died. So, so if Ripley only makes it through 3, don't expect to make it through 2. You know.
Yeah. That's a cool, great character, for sure. But just around you as a role player, Andrew, because this is a role play podcast, and you said you were GMing for 22 years. What was it you were GMing back then, and what was your jam in the?
I GM Dungeons and Dragons. I BattleTech, Mech Warrior, the Phasa Star Trek.
Yeah.
West End game Star Wars was my favorite.
Yeah. A lot of these X's.
The DC superheroes, the Marvel superheroes. You know, basically all the games of the 80s.
Yeah, for sure. Cool. Just to fall rounded up. It's not very important for this interview as a whole. I was just curious when you said it. Today's topic is, of course, Aliens RPG from Free Liga. We will explore how to be a better game master in this game, and why it's so cool, and how to create the best stories in this game. Check out our Facebook page, GM Workshop, the podcast, Discord, and Twitter if you want to interact with us or be on the podcast. Reach out to us so you can give us your GM advice and perspectives on your favorite game. When you look at the Alien RPG, what is the great stuff for? Why would you sell this to a player group? What is the great stuff in Alien RPG? Besides the one we always touch on, you can elaborate on that more if you want.
That's an interesting question. It's really for me. What makes the game is 2 things. It's the stress mechanic, and it's the agendas. Because I think this singles the game out from other sci-fi games. And yeah, I mean, there are other horror things that have something similar. Like, you know, Call of Cthulhu has the insanity rules,
not the same.
but I think that stress mechanic is really helpful, because there's always that player sitting at the table who's like, yo, I saw all the movies, I don't care, I'm gonna go take my gun and put it in that alien's face. I'm tough. And you know, no, you're not, because you just messed up your stress roll. So now you're not going to be so tough. For
sure. So the ability to create tense situation through the system, which Free League as the Engine Zero system will be one of the selling points for sure. And I love the stress mechanic. I just adore it, and really can screw over players so fast if they don't understand it and push themselves too much, for sure. And as you said, the agendas are especially in cinematic scenarios, are key to dynamic storyline for sure. And that's some of the issues in Aliens for sure. It's the campaign game versus cinematic game, but I think they fixed it as a meta story instead of a role story or a campaign story and classic D&D, the hero's journey kind of story. That's not the story we want to tell in Aliens for sure.
Yeah, it was easy. Well, all right, two things. One, what's good about the agendas is that it's definitely Alien is definitely a gateway drug into gaming. Okay, so the rules are very easy to pick up, and something like the agendas, someone who's sitting at that table for the first time may not know how they're supposed to handle their character, and the agenda gives them a guide, and it's not like I was a little worried, and so it was really like, okay, is this going to feel like we're telling them they have to do a certain thing, but we're not. We're giving them this guideline, and you could take it that direction or not. But I've seen people take that to such great extremes; it's fantastic. They really get into it, and then after that, they're able to go into campaign play, and they understand how to do this now because they had a little bit of a push that got them in the right direction. Now with the campaign thing, one of the reasons why obviously we're going to start with Colonial Marines because
that's your lead design on. And your lead design on it. So
yeah, but what's great about that is, if you die, a Marine unit is going to get a replacement. They're not going to just say, okay, now we're only 4 Marines instead of 12. No, they're going to fill out that unit unless there's not enough people to fill out that unit, which is a different story.
Yeah.
But so it's easy enough to have people rotate in and out. And in the end, your unit may not have any of the same people it started with, but unless something really got messed up, they all probably did not die at the same time. So it's sort of like, the whole thing about the ship of Theseus. So it's like they're moving a little bit of the hull over and over, and then by the time you're done, it's a brand new hull completely. But is it still the ship of Theseus? Well, I say it is, and this is still. Yes. That group of characters. It's just that unit is now composed of new people, and you've been with them the whole time. So you've grown with those characters, even if it's not the same character you started with.
I like that build up you created in the first scenario, the first bit of the campaign. You see some remnants of aliens, but it's more human versus humans in that the first chapter of the campaign, and that's pretty cool. And the next chapter it will be a bit more.
See, it's interesting because it's like one of the things we set off to do was to say, okay, so aliens are a special thing, so you're not going to encounter them all the time.
Nope.
And then when I went and created the meta story for the Colonial Marine book, it was all about aliens being everywhere. And I was like, oh boy, what did I do here? Now they're not special. So how do you do that and still make it special? And that thing, I don't want to give away too many spoilers, but that thing in the first adventure, which you're talking about, like you see that thing, and then you immediately think that those things are going to be everywhere.
Yes.
And they're not in that particular area. I don't want to spoil anything, but it's enough to get the players. All right, what the hell's going on? What are we going to do now?
Yeah.
And that sets it up. And even if you never pull that trigger, if that thing never shows up, you still got that tension there, and that's the trick.
Yes.
Everybody needs to be at the table with that tension. What's going to happen next? Are we really safe or not?
Yeah, because as a GM, I have the GM screen where they're written aliens on it, so they know we are playing aliens. So of course they will respect aliens in some regards, in some time, in through this campaign, and seven small scenarios. They will be really disappointed if they don't meet an alien in some capacity for sure. But I try to lower the expectations and gave them some small breadcrumbs of alienness in the first chapter for sure.
It's the same as like Jaws, the movie Jaws.
Yep.
Like the movie is terrifying because we don't see the shark for most of the movie.
Yes.
But we know it's there. So if you play the Alien game right, if you don't, and now, oh no, we roll the dice.
Yeah.
It's another Alien.
Mm-hmm.
If you do that, no, it's not going to work.
Nope.
But if you build up that fear and that tension, then your table's going to explode with greatness.
Mm-hmm. For sure. And I love the deadliness in the aliens. So it's obvious for inexperienced GMs to see. Okay, I won't use won't use this alien right now because I will kill half the players or something, or half the characters for sure. I love that the dynamic you have put into the system as a whole, for sure.
See, I didn't write the rules.
No,
I didn't write
know,
the stats.
I know. I know.
But I did write a document when we started saying I think that we should have this. I think we should have that.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know what in that document they had already decided or not, but all I know is that things started syncing up. Like one of the things I said is I want the alien to be tough. I want it to be like the first movie, not like the second movie when they're just getting blown away. It needs to be this horrific thing. And the other thing that I said is I had said that I thought we should have some kind of rules for post-traumatic stress disorder, which I don't think that. I think they developed the stress thing without even knowing that I wanted to do that. Like they were already doing that.
Yeah.
So that's what's really great about working with Free League. They really care about the product too.
For sure.
And they're doing the thinking about it just like I am. I don't have to fight them on stuff. Sometimes they have a better idea than I do, but we're always in the same area. So it's really it's good.
That's epic. When you're looking at the franchise as a whole, as like Aliens, and players want to explore it, where did you begin and start? Where did you begin to see how to develop campaign settings, not to copy the movies and not to copy other horror movies in space like Event Horizon or so on? How did you conceptualize a scenario first of all, but also a campaign where we talked about how did you start this process?
Well, with Chariot of the Gods, they wanted to have something on a ship. They wanted to have a ship that was found that had been missing. This is the stuff that I was given when I came on board, because they were already, like I said, they were already developing part of it. And when I looked at it, I was like, oh, this could very easily accidentally be the same as the first Alien movie, and we don't want that. So it has the trappings of that. So if you set it up with the trappings of that, your players are going to go in saying, I know what's going to happen. And then once they get on board that ship, it ain't what they thought was going to happen. So, and that's why, I mean, I hate this because I don't want to spoil anything for.
It's fine. Yeah, I understand.
Yeah. There's something I did there that people at first complain about, and then they're like, "Damn, that was good. Never mind."
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I know what you mean.
I think you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, for
too.
sure. I know everybody who listens to this have played Chariot of Gods know what you're talking about because it's a great dynamic and all the characters that are lined up to replace the characters when they mess up and die in through this module or this adventure is
without explaining what it is. Like there's the thing that I did. Okay, there are people who don't like this about the franchise.
Yes.
Okay, and they're like, I every now and then we see someone pop up on the boards and saying like, oh, I want to replace this with this thing, this other thing, the obvious thing. Okay, and I see the other players tell them, no, you don't want to do that because the whole thing is balanced around it not being that thing.
Yes.
So, it makes me proud to see that the other GMs figured that out, because I'm doing this stuff and I'm working with Free League, but at the same time, I'm like, does this make sense? I don't know if this makes sense. I'm talking to myself. No one's here. They're over in Europe. I'm here in St. Louis. I'm talking to him. I ask my cat. He looks at me. He doesn't give me a good answer. So does it work or does it not? And when I see people say those things, I'm like so relieved. I'm like, oh, thank God, it makes sense. Thank God they got it. Because you don't know. You really don't know.
Oh, important question. Does your cat have the same name as Ripley's cat?
No, my cat's name is Adrian.
Okay.
And you may be seeing him in some products soon. That's all I'm going to say.
Nice. Cool. That's a side note. When you, but yeah, if you, as you said, the Chariot of Gods has another antagonist in the normal. We want to if not to reference too much and not to spoil too much.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah.
Because in the starter set and in the starter set, there's a short scenario. There's a Hadley's Last Hope, right? And there we got the classic alien, and that's pretty cool for the most part. And we got all the tension and all the drama surrounding that compound, and we have all the tropes unfolding in our faces right there and dying of him. Painfully, for sure. It's a great short introductional scenarios or module or adventure.
The one that's in the, you're talking about the one in the core book?
Yeah, the Hadley's.
I didn't write that.
No,
that was Dave Semark who wrote that. Yeah,
I know, but just to say, just to reference.
And that was another reason why I made the choice I did. I did because it's like Dave is doing this and Dave's got this handled here perfectly fine. We need to do something completely different with the cinematic.
Yes,
so.
let's expand. let's expand. Yeah, and I can't remember. Did you help with the Destroyer of the Worlds? Destroyer of the Worlds.
I wrote Destroyer.
Yeah, Destroyer. Yeah, sure.
Destroyer.
Yeah, okay. Sorry, I don't have it on my shelf right
now. Yeah, no, I wrote. It's a trilogy of adventures.
Yeah.
It's Chariot of the Gods, Destroyer of Worlds, and the third one is. I'm not sure if the title was approved yet, but the working title was Heart of Darkness.
Yeah, okay.
So I don't know if it's been approved yet.
Okay, it's coming.
Because it's definitely coming. Yeah. It's over at Disney for approval. So
okay, nice. So run through the machines over there. Yeah, and then in from Destroyer of Worlds, then we can play Alien Colonial Marine campaign setting from
that's one of the things.
Frontier War.
I'm very much into story with this stuff because when I played when I ran the Star Trek game, I was very interested in advancing the timeline for my players, so that they felt like the universe was growing around them. So this conflict here leads to something that happened 6 adventures later. Now, the thing is with that is that was all at my table, and that's all it was. But what we have the opportunity to do here, by coordinating with the other license holders, is the events that are unfolding are occurring in the expanded Alien universe. Yeah. There's novels where they're going to mention Destroyer of Worlds, what happened there. So you're involved in events that are getting mentioned throughout the franchise. Yeah. And so you're like, hey, I did that. They don't mention the name of the person who was there, but they mention the event. Mm-hmm. So everybody who played that feels like, hey, I'm part of the universe.
Yes.
And that's what with Destroyer. A lot of people, there's something weird that happens in Destroyer that people are like, why did this happen all of a sudden? Well, once you get the Colonial Marine book, you're like, oh. That was the opening shot of what's going on in the Colonial Marine book. Yes. So we're building a much bigger narrative here with the universe, and it's exciting to me to see it unfolding the way it is. Even the Fireteam Elite, the video game that came out, it takes place 20 years after what's happening in the role-playing game, but they mention the Frontier War. They mention one of the generals that's involved in the campaign there. They talk about that general in that game.
Yes, as
if it was as 20 years ago this happened with this general and the Frontier War and the UPP. So we're filling in history here. We're working together to make this all one universe.
For sure, it's a cool concept to use a franchise like in some open regards as you do, and I love the franchise as a whole, but also it's pretty difficult to play in this franchise as I said before, surrounding the Alien. My players expect that there will come some aliens. So if I don't put in an alien in my game, they will be disappointed. And if I put too many aliens in the game, I will kill them for most part. So it's a fine balance between the meta game, and as one of my hosts, one of my guests, Christopher, he elaborated on the Alien RPG. If he wants to describe a facehugger, he won't say facehugger. He won't say the word facehugger. He will say spider-like slimy thingy crawling very fast and with a lump of meat hanging in from the backside of it. So some players will recognize it as, "Whoa, there's a facehugger, let's get away." But some players may say, "Oh, what the hell is that?" and try to investigate and try to put the game in motion as in that regards. That's it's pretty fine balance in this in so well defined setting and franchise as the Alien universe, for sure.
Yeah, like in the adventures we have, in order to bring the story to the next act, like there's the equivalent of what I would call a cutscene in a video game,
Yes.
where this one thing is going to happen, which is going to change this only happens when you get to that point. So if it takes you an hour or 4 hours or 4 days to get there, but whenever it happens, this is what changes it to the next act, and it's usually something horrific.
Yeah.
The way I've set it up. So I did it first in Chariot, when a creature is born in Chariot, and it's very disturbing. I've gotten a lot of GMs told me that their players got sick at the table, and that's a good thing,
Yeah.
But that's the thing. When I do that, there's no way would I say facehugger, chestburster, or alien. You're describing what you're seeing. Yes. And that's more horrific. So,
For sure. And the sounds and the feelings surrounding the sounds from the air vents and so on, instead of, as you said, an example as a shark, the Jar movie, that we don't see the shark that many times. Also, Silent the Lamb, Hannibal Lecter, he's also a force, a really horrific character, but do you know how many minutes in this 2-hour-long movie he is in the focus in the screen?
Yeah, not long. What is it, like
13
15 minutes?
Yeah, 13 minutes.
13 minutes?
Yeah, that's pretty wild, because when we look back on that movie, we see Anthony Hopkins as Hannibal Lecter.
His defining role was 15 minutes.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
That's pretty wild. He's great. No, when we talk about Aliens, it's horror, but also action, because the system. I don't know. I know you hasn't been around the system as much, but you know the system, and the horror surrounding Alien are very important. But how do you preserve the game in that horror sphere without killing your characters and giving the players some ways to explore this universe?
I'll see people talk about this, and one person's like, "Oh, it's too hard. My players died in 5 seconds," and then the other GM's like, "Well, your players are trying to play Dungeons and Dragons, and that's why they died in 5 minutes."
Yes,
smart groups will survive. You can, if your players are smart about things, and I'm not talking about avoiding things, okay? I'm talking about when something is, there's ways to deal with everything, and if you're gonna run in and think I'm gonna just run in and shoot this thing in the face, goodbye, you're dead.
Yes.
You always want to keep your distance, and even if you keep your distance, it can get to you real fast anyway. But you gotta not do stupid things. And I've seen, I ran a couple of games at GameholeCon this year.
Oh, nice.
One of them was was live for charity on a streaming thing.
Oh, cool.
And I saw the players. They knew when to get heroic. It was interesting. It's like they're like, no, now is when I'm going to sacrifice myself. And it's funny, because they do something crazy to sacrifice themselves to save the others and save the mission. And those die rolls can suddenly make it so that something crazy happens that doesn't kill you, And you wind up with this epic situation. I had this one guy, this one android character. He was going to sacrifice himself against this queen that was chasing them on the surface of a space station, like on the outside, and so that the other people could get away. He locked, he basically tried to grab her and keep her from moving forward. And they kept rolling, and we rolled. The Queen and the android kept rolling the same damn thing every time, so they were locked in Mortal Kombat. While all this other crazy stuff was happening, and eventually the Queen swats him, and he goes spiraling off into space. But it was great to see the craziness that was going on, and and then she's using her piston tongue, to hit him in the shoulder joint. Then his head's hanging off, but he's still making those damn rolls the same as her. So your players, if you have players who totally embrace the genre, you're good. And if they don't, it's up to the GM to let them know this is not what you're used to playing. This is going to be a different thing. You got to look at this like the movies instead of looking at it like Dungeons and Dragons or something. And I'm not. Dungeons and Dragons was, I played that for 22 years. Like I said, not knocking Dungeons and Dragons at all. It's just a totally different type of experience, and you have to be ready to try something new, or otherwise, why not just play Dungeons and Dragons instead?
It's the heroes. It's not the hero's journey. It's not from level 1 to level 20, and we can become gods and so on. That's not the story we want to tell, because we are around the table as players want to hear this story. You as GM god, it's not important which role I start and end the campaign or the cinematic scenario with or in front of me, as we have touched on before.
That thing was was tough, because this was the Colonial Marine book was our first time figuring out a campaign for Alien. And Free League had parameters they wanted me to do, and it was they had to be able to be played out of order. Okay, but at the same time, we needed to be escalating the risks and not the risks, the stakes. The stakes needed to be escalating. Okay, and I'm like, well, how do you escalate the stakes if I played 3 before 1? Wouldn't the stakes in 3 be more difficult than the ones in the first adventure? You know what I'm saying? So that's when I came up with the epiphany system that's in there. So that, the third adventure you play, whichever one that is where you learn epiphany number 3. And it was the only way I could come up with to make it work. And I was really happy with it in the end. And I hope we're going to use that epiphany thing in a lot of things moving forward. So I think it works. Yeah, it gives the GM flexibility. And if the GM just wants to play two of those adventures and then make up their own for the other ceremonies, they know, okay, I'm making up this adventure, but in order to fit the campaign, I need to make sure that at this point, this epiphany is taken care of in that adventure. So it gives you broad strokes and also helps you if you don't know where to go. So it's I was like, this is impossible at first. I was like, how am I gonna make this work? But then we came up with it. So
I like the epiphany concept because it's give me a meta level, help the players immerse into the characters, even if they lose their character. So I can continue the story with the players as a whole. In the, not to spoil too much, but in Colonial Marine you touch we'll visit some of the newer aspects in the Alien franchise, the 2 latest movies and the expanded universe from there, the engineers and so on. So that's also something we have to cohere with. If I have players that haven't seen those movies or don't know the concept, it's cool because I can cheat them or surprise them. But if I look at the setting as a whole, I like the alien part of it, and the engineering part of it is so strange or from another generation of this franchise, and I have the difficulty to put these 2 things together. But you have worked a lot with the extended universe. Can you help us try to put the movies from the 90s to the movies in the zeros and the tens?
I mean, so I actually really like the prequels. I know a lot of people have issues with it.
Yeah, for sure. I like them too.
And one of my favorite things that people have said is that Chariot of the Gods redeems the Alien prequels. And I'm like, and it's not that it's not redeeming anything. There's a lot of good stuff in the prequels, but some people don't like the story. But that doesn't mean the stuff that's in there isn't something they're going to like. It's so the way I've just disseminated it, moved it around in the universe with the core book and the supplements, easy for people to say, oh wow, that thing is actually really cool and some cool stuff can be done with it. Maybe they're not into David's story and that's why they didn't like Covenant. You know, I personally love David. I think he's one of the greatest nemesis there could be.
He's a great antagonist. He's so great.
And that's the thing. Like, it's not just the alien in Aliens. It's androids and it's corporate greed.
Your mother.
You know. Yep. You know. So you know, it's artificial intelligence, it's corporate greed, and it's aliens. And the thing about Alien, and this is the way I approached a lot of stuff in the core book, is that it's not just the alien is alien. The UPP is alien to the United Americas because it's different. You know, it's something. It's a lifestyle that we don't understand, and therefore we reject. It's alien to us. You know, and I tried to look at it all that way. And it's funny. It's funny seeing people break out into fights about the UPP because some people insist they're communist and they're not. They're socialist. You know, there are states in the UPP that are communist, but as a whole, the whole government is socialist, and there's a gray area there. You know, but it's funny seeing people break out into fights about it because it's like, okay, guys, it's whatever you want it to be. It really is, you know.
It's a sci-fi setting. Come on, let's go. Not to go all McCarthy on UPP, but yeah, it's as a U.S. citizen, you have to see this as socialist, and I'm sitting in Denmark where we have a social democratic government. So there's a point of view is very important here, and I see them as hardcore Marxist or communist because they are left from what we want.
But at the end of the day, they're just people, and that's the thing. That's the thing that everybody forgets.
And they're normal soldiers.
You know,
and they're normal soldiers.
They're having normal life issues and everything. Just because their government is different or whatever, you know, it doesn't make them the bad guys. It just makes them the opposition.
Yes, and that's a great antagonist because they are humans doing human stuff from ideologies which are different from our player characters' ideology.
In a lot of cases, they're just as much pawns of their masters, in this case, government, instead of corporate that we have on the other side. You know, so
German soldiers in Second World War wasn't Nazis. That's the same analogy. I think.
They're just they're just suffering as much as your characters will be, and it's interesting to see that people just automatically have an animosity towards it, where I'm just like, I feel like we need to see past these things. But that's beautiful because that's Alien. That's what makes it Alien. That I don't understand these people, so I hate them. That's Alien also, Yeah.
The corporate greed I also want to touch on, because in this, especially the second movie, we have the corporate guy. Burke. And he's just, wow, he's so creepy because he's everybody's friend and nice and sets up Newt and Ripley when they're sleeping. It's just a great character, and I'm always using this kind of character in my games in some capacity for sure, because these slick guys, you don't know where they stand and what their agenda are. It's beautiful. Also the character in Chariot of the Gods, the player character in the Chariot of Gods is the same, like a Burke light character for sure. I like him a lot.
Yeah, but there's one character in there that people expect to be like that, and they're actually doing it for a different reason.
Yes.
So that was another thing I wanted to put in there, because I was like, just because someone has a secret agenda, and even if just because they're going to cause your death, it doesn't mean that they're doing it for money. It could be a good reason why they're doing it. So that's the key. I don't want to repeat the same thing over and over again. I want to show, and I'm not creating. Yeah, I'm creating new stuff that I'm bringing into the universe. True. Okay. But at the same time, 90% of what I'm quote creating quote is filling in the blanks of stuff that's there already. It's like, I've gone through all these books. I've gone through all this stuff, and I was like, everybody always touches on this thing, but what about this thing that's just out of reach? Why didn't anybody notice that? Why don't we center on that instead? And it feels familiar to the players, but then there's something just enough different for it to not to feel like boring. So it's a whole balancing act, and it's something like Alien and something like Terminator. It can very easily just fall into a yawn fest, and with Alien, luckily we've made it not that, and the reactions have been great. So I'm very happy about that.
For sure, but we also have to be careful to using too many tropes and cliches when we are playing this game, because it will be very fast-paced, boring if you always want to use these cliches as the corrupt android, or the corrupt corporate guy, or the corrupt mother, and of course the alien as the frosting on the cake, right? So we want to use these antagonists and the environment, because space is very dangerous and can be a force to be reckoned with. I have a small cinematic scenario run on conventions where the players are on a time schedule because the ship are drawing into a sun's gravity, and they cannot turn the ship around. And they have to find a way to get to the lifeboats or the life shuttles and fly away from it. So also the environments is also antagonists in both in sci-fi, but especially in Aliens, because we have so well-defined franchises in the monster and the corporates and the other nations, as we touched on before, like the UPP.
Space is hell. Sure. I mean, with that first opening paragraph that I put in the book, I wanted to establish this is not a friendly place. We don't belong here. We're actually the alien thing here because we're in some place that we were not meant to survive in. So yeah, it's a brutal, brutal universe, and it's beautiful because of it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, with all the gravity, black holes, radiation, all the stuff, and the planets we are sending our players or player characters into the breach, they are not terraformed perfectly. They are not ready to receive human feet on the ground yet, but we are sending them anyway, and that's a perfect balance to find in a sci-fi game as a whole, but especially again in Alien.
No, you won't get any XP.
As an alien, it's a sci-fi, and I love the Aliens because it's like hard sci-fi. It's realistic, it's brutal, and there's not a lot of weird races. The players cannot play Wookiees or Twi'leks or Klingons or anything like that. So it's easier for the players to immerse into a human. We know how to walk on the cold floor with our bare feet and after waking up, so it's easier to emerge and get scared when the shit hits the fan, for sure. When we're moving on to more in the setting or the franchise as a whole, Blade Runner and Predator are they the same setting? I know the Blade Runner, the newest movie, has some spoilers incorporated in it.
No. Blade Runner is not even owned by the same company.
No, I know that.
No, I know you know that, but this question is the bane of my existence. So there are three different universes. There are three different universes. Four if we're going to count Blade Runner. Okay. Yeah. So there's the Blade Runner universe.
Yes.
There's the Alien / Prometheus universe. Mm-hmm. There's the Predator universe. Yeah. And then there's the AVP universe. Yes. It doesn't. What happens in Alien Predator is different than what happens in AVP. And the people will argue about this, but it's literally the way the franchise is handled. Easter eggs people get confused by. They think Easter eggs are evidence that these things coexist in the same universe. They are not. I mean, the Millennium Falcon is in Star Trek First Contact. It's one of the ships fighting the Borg cube. Does that mean Star Wars and Star Trek are the same universe? No, it means that they're like, let's put the Millennium Falcon in there. It's funny, and that's what they did.
Yes.
And that alien skull that started all this in Predator 2.
Predator 2, yeah.
That was just a nod and a wink. That's all it was.
Yeah.
And the way it was described to me when I first came on at Fox was, you got to look at it like Batman.
Yes.
There's the Christian Bale Batman, and there's the Michael Keaton Batman. They're both Batman, but they have nothing to do with each other, and that's how you have to look at it. So
Jack Nicholson, the Joker, and the one in Black Knight,
Heath Ledger, and then
Heath Ledger's,
Joaquin Phoenix now, right?
Yeah, Joaquin Phoenix.
Yeah. So they're all brilliant versions of the Joker, but they're not the same Joker. There's no question of that. So that's the thing, and a couple of little things slipped through, but in most cases, if anything had anything remotely to do with AVP, I did not include it in the core book, and I won't include it in anything here because, and I've said this repeatedly, I'm not saying we're going to do an AVP book. I doubt it. We will. I don't know if we will. Whatever. But if it ever comes to that point where Fox, Disney's like, oh, why don't you do AVP now, or we decide to do AVP now, that stuff will be filled with a ton of stuff that you don't have already, because it's the stuff that's specifically to AVP books. And will you be able to use the books together? Absolutely. Of course, it's going to be probably the same rule system or a variant of it. This will make, if there's ever an AVP thing, people will be like, oh, so this is what defines it. But no, they're not the same universe, not the same universe, not the same universe.
We have to find that. Thanks. Because I've talked to my little brother. He's not really in role playing, but he said I will talk to you soon, and said I will play Alien role playing game for some more. And he was very then he said he wants to be in the games, and cool. That's he's back in role playing. Sure, I want to play Predator. So he just looked angry at him. Shut up. So
the timelines don't sync up.
The timelines don't match. Yeah, that doesn't match because we have the Alien beginning is much later than the 90s Predator 2 skull, so it doesn't line up at all.
Well, even the Blade Runner stuff doesn't line up. None of it really does. So it's
Blade Runner Blade Runner stuff could be mingled into the Alien universe for sure, but it's not. It's too many hassle.
And obviously, Philly's going to be doing the Blade Runner game. So. Like
the cast is complete.
Yeah, but I would tell people, if you're going to do a campaign or an adventure that takes place on the inner systems, the core systems, I would use that Blade Runner book as inspiration for it.
Sure.
It's because that's the way those inner colonies are. They're overbuilt with cities, and they're all tech. They're not like what we see on LV-426. It's
cyberpunk.
That's just they're not the rural farmers all the way out in the middle of nowhere. They are enjoying the excess that they get from those people that are out in the middle of nowhere doing all the hard work. So
it's New York and backwater New Mexico. That's the difference. In regards of Blade Runner, you don't know. I know you don't have much to do with it, but I actually like the idea you got there to use the Blade Runner mechanics, and have seen some of it, and as a core system, because if you want to run a campaign centered around corporate greed as an antagonist, it would be cool, and sending out missions or elite soldiers, and then we can shift over to play another bunch of characters. So we have two player groups. We have the corporate assholes in the inner systems, and the colonial marines and marshals or whatever in the outer planets, and it's giving them orders to do stuff.
Even if you're playing space truckers, are going to make a delivery to one of those inner core planets. So
yes,
there's just And again, this is not an official thing. I'm not telling you it's a supplement for this or anything. I'm saying that's what I would do because I think it's a useful resource. That's all.
Yes, and the same system, so you can slide over characters from one to another.
You don't have to. You don't have to do the heavy lifting. It's done already.
No, it's for sure. Well, Andrew, I don't have much for you else tonight. Do you have anything you want to say or elaborate on, or something I forgot in our outline?
No, just we have a bunch of cool stuff coming. Unfortunately, I can't really mention what it is yet, but I'll let you know so that you can tell your listeners when we can. I have to wait for press releases, you know.
Yeah, for sure.
So, but
no problem.
But yeah, all I can say is that the Terminator game is coming in April. That's from Nightfall. We have a bunch of Alien stuff coming that I can't give specifics for yet. So
other than Heart of Darkness.
The
campaign. So that's a bit spoiler. And that's the Terminator game. I'm pretty curious. What is the reason to play it? How do you play a Terminator game? Can you talk about that a bit?
What do you mean? How do you play it?
What are we playing? What's timeline? What are we playing? Are we playing Terminators? Are we playing humans? Are we playing against the Terminator? Or
okay, yeah. So because this book is specifically tied into the first Terminator movie. Okay.
Okay. Yeah.
So it doesn't involve elements from the other films. And if we were going to do like a T2 book or something, we would do How to Play a Terminator or whatever. But that's not part of T1 because the Terminator was only presented as a villain in T1. So, So you're playing Resistance fighters, or you can play natives of a specific era. So you can be pretty much it centers mostly on the 80s because if we again Terminator 2 would be center mostly on the 90s. But we have a huge thing for the 2020s. Because it's funny because the 2020s is the war against the machines, and that's where we are now in our real world. So it's I told them I kind of want to set the game now, but in the alternate now. So somewhere out there are people. Somewhere out there in another timeline, people are arguing about social media, but not in your life. You're dealing with this crap. You're trying to find a way to survive.
Killer machines. All over the place.
So there's the time travel element and stuff like that, and we have some cool supplements coming for that as well. So when that gets released, if you want to have me back on, we can talk about that too.
For sure, that would be pretty cool. That's I love the Terminator setting, or the battle between machine and humanity is always exciting for sci-fi talk. One last thing about aliens, I forgot. The 80s tech level in the books.
Mm-hmm.
How do you view this? How do you? Is this ignoring because we don't have Wi-Fi in aliens? We don't have mobiles. We don't have anything we got today in 2022.
I kind of covered this in the core book because it's something that's interesting to me. I said that the newer tech, in order to get versions of the newer tech that really doesn't get screwed up by the occasional solar flare and whatnot, it costs a huge amount of money. So only corporate chips like the Prometheus have stuff like that. But when you have a dirtball colony, the CRT monitors are safer. These things are just technology that's not going to fall apart and is easier to fix and easier with replacement parts than the more complicated stuff. So the Nostromo was a truck that was old. Prometheus was even though it came beforehand, Prometheus was state of the art. It was the science vessel owned by the richest guy in the universe. So and then in Covenant, that was a highly publicized colony mission where they were going to be like, we're going to give you everything and make you look really cool, So it's a very different thing than here's your shitty little space. Oh, am I allowed to curse? I'm sorry if I'm not.
No, that's fine.
Here's your crappy little space truck, with your crappy tech, and here's your hole in the wall colony that has a whole 120 whatever people. you know,
That's for sure.
with here, just take this crap and try to survive. You know, it's a different thing. But one of the things I found really interesting was I wanted to find a way to use some of the older tech that's like seen. If you look around in the Nostromo, you'll see like 90-minute cassettes from audio cassettes and I found a way to explain that because I did a deep dive into research, and there's all this stuff where people are doing magnetic tape can be used to hold a hell of a lot more data than we thought. And so that 90 is like 90 terabytes. It's not 90 minutes. So that's the nonsense I came up to explain it. And it's disposable media. So, you know, it's not intended to last. It's literally, it's more like a disposable culture is what it is. It's you know, anything super high tech, if it breaks, how am I going to fix it on the ass end of space? But if it's easy to do, you know, I can program a VCR, so VCRs probably work.
Yeah, probably. And so what you're saying is that we won't be playing in the corporate sector in the inner rims systems.
Well, we might be. I mean, we might be, honestly. Yeah, no.
Yeah.
But like, I mean, there's a book that we're working on, which I mentioned before, which is about explorers and colonists. It's the next campaign book, right? And you're going to see that, you know, the corporate high tech missions have a lot better stuff than the other guys do, and it's a classism thing is what it comes down to.
Well, it was one of my co-host Nils doesn't like the alien setting because he's a sci-fi nerd. So and he also gets ignored by the tech level. But now I got you the answer from the main man, so he can shove it now. So that's pretty cool, Andrew.
look up the chapter in the core book and just let him look at that. Yeah. So
for sure.
I did my best to make it work. I think it does.
For sure.
So.
Cool, Andrew. I don't have any more for you tonight, and I'm really glad to talk to you. And I want to talk to you again later on the Terminator game or something else from the Alien RPG for sure. If you
this was a lot of fun. Thanks for having me.
Thanks to Andrew for this talk about aliens. Next time we want to explore more Alien RPG, and we will do a rerun of our talk with Christopher Tavanati. Follow us on Facebook, GM Workshop, the podcast. If you want to interact with us and talk to us, give us a message.